Welcome, everyone, to the first ever Latinx Kidlit Book Festival. It is such an honor to be here with these fabulous rock star authors. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that we have our anti-harassment policy in the chat box, so please take a look at that. And I can't wait to get started here. So I am a huge, huge fan of every author here. This is the dream panel. So I'm going to try to like calm my fangirl like vibes. But I'd love to start by introducing everyone, and then we'll dive right into the first question. So first, if I introduce you, if you could hold up your book as well, your current book, I should say. Liliam Rivera is an award-winning writer and author of children's books, including her latest, Never Look Back. It's incredible. It's a retelling of the Greek myth, Orpheus and Eurydice. How do you say that?
Eurydice. I had to practice many times.
All right, here we go. Set in New York, and it's been published by Bloomsbury. Her work has also appeared in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Elle, to name a few. Liliam lives in Los Angeles. We also have Lucas Roca, who is a librarian. Did I say your name correctly? Rocha? Rocha, yep, who is a librarian living in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He received his MS in Information Science from Fluminense Federal University in Rio, Brazil. Where We Go From Here is his first novel. It's also incredible. Oh my God, I can't wait to talk about all these books. All right, and then Jenny Torres Sanchez. She is a full-time writer and former English teacher. Shout out to the teachers. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, but has lived on the border of two worlds her whole life. She is the author of We Are Not From Here, The Fall of Innocence, Because of the Sun, Death Dickinson and the Demented Life of Frenchie Garcia, and The Downside of Being Charlie. She lives in Orlando, Florida, with her husband and children. And last but not least, we have Shamile Said Mendez, who is a football-obsessed Argentine-American who loves meteor showers, summer, astrology, and pizza. She lives in Utah with her Puerto Rican husband and their 5 kids, 2 adorable dogs, and 1 majestic cat. An inaugural Walter Dean Myers Grant recipient, she's also a graduate of Voices of Our Nation, VONA, and the Vermont College of Fine Arts MFA Writing for Children's and Young Adult program. She is a picture book, middle grade, and YA author. She's also part of Las Musas, the first collective of women and non-binary Latinx middle grade and YA authors. And also Las Musas is organizing this entire festival. So it's really great to have you all here. My name is Jennifer DeLeon, and I am an author, an editor, and teacher living in Boston, in the Boston area. And I'm the author of Don't Ask Me Where I'm From, which is my debut YA novel. So here we are. I'm so excited. Let's get started. I feel like I want to ask you 10 million questions, but I will start with a question that is kind of general, but I hope will allow you to all share a story, a mini story. I'm dying to know, how did you take a huge topic, a big topic, right, of social justice, of Hurricane Maria, of HIV in Brazil? You know, there's so many incredible topics here. How do you take this huge issue and distill it down into one story? So if each of you could actually share how you went from taking this seed of an idea and bringing it to this full-blown gorgeous tree that you have each done. So why don't we start with Liliam, and then we'll go to Lucas, Jenny, and then Shamile.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. And thanks for being our moderator today. And much love to Las Musas and to everyone here today. And shout out to Brazil. What's up? So how did we do this? I don't, all my books have some sort of social justice, something in it, you know, and it's not like I go in thinking that I'm going to do that. It's just because this is my life and I'm always talking about it. It's, you know, it's the things that I am trying to incorporate, you know, and deal with and overcome, you know, and overcome. And so But for Never Look Back, Hurricane Maria affected my family greatly. I had a missing uncle who I had to go on Twitter and social media just to try to find a way of getting to him. Wow. He was like 80 years old, and I'm just one story of many, right? Like so many people were suffering, and this pain and this feeling of hopelessness, it lasted for over a year. I wrote an essay about it for a publication. It was taking over so much of me, and it filled me with such depression. And so I didn't know how to write. I didn't know how to write my next novel without it being all about hate and rage. And so I really was struggling, and because I have to mention Brazil is because I fell in love. When I was a little kid, I fell in love with the movie Black Orpheus, which is a retelling of the Greek myth Orpheus and Eurydice. And so I watched that when I was 8 years old in the Bronx, and it was something that I constantly watch and I constantly cry about, And so I had to figure out a way of writing about love and hope because I was in such a dark place. Mm-hmm. And so then how can I write about love and hope? I had to figure out a structure, and I used the Greek myth as my way of containing this huge story, Hurricane Maria, these two young Afro-Latinos trying to find each other, struggling from not even like supernatural obstacles, but also just current everyday obstacles. Mm-hmm. And so then how do I write about that and not fall into a deep, dark despair? Mm-hmm. So I had to write towards hope. And I was inspired by Black Orpheus. I was inspired by the Greek myth, and it became my structure. And that was the way I was able to contain it all in one spot. And write about this write about young love, which is what I really needed, actually.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And how you mentioned, like, you're telling one story of many, and that's something that I think we can do. I think there's pressure sometimes to write about, in all caps, Hurricane Maria, right? Or like young people's experience with Hurricane Maria. It's too much pressure. It's just too big. And so I love how you took some of your past and your passion for this movie, and then this, century-old structure, right, story, and made it modern and new. And it was so brilliant and creative and a total page turner. I was just like, I need to know what happens. And it was scary too, like with the waiters with their faces and everything. I won't give it away for people. You need to go get it because it will keep you up at night. So thank you for sharing that story. I love hearing the origin stories of novels.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah. So Lucas.
Yes. So first of all, thank you so much for you, Jen, for moderating this panel. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for inviting me. It's such an honor to be part of this dream team. So to where we go from here, one of those things that Lillian talked about, hope, that's something that really resonates to me because I really want to write a story that talks about hope and not about death and not about loneliness. That is kind of what people first thinks when they are thinking about HIV or about the LGBT community is always something like, oh, the loneliness of the end of their lives. And I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk a story about those kids that had to deal with something that's very real and is part of everyone's life, but in a way that could be hopeful. So other kids could read this book and could understand that HIV is not the end of life. It's not something that should be such a big problem. And the main problem of HIV is really the prejudice. So this story kind of started, the seed of the story kind of started when I worked at a health journal. I worked there as a librarian. And one day I read an article that talked a little bit about how Brazilian people perceive HIV on the 21st century. So it was a lot of different interviews, and there was a lot of talking of things that I thought in my mind that was something of the AIDS crisis of the 80s and the 90s, but are still prejudices that exist today. So I thought, what can I do about it to change that? How can I change that, even if for 1 or 10 people, you know? So I started to write about these three kids. Is this book's told from three different perspectives, and how each one of them deals with HIV. Because we have this kid that just found out that he has the virus, he's HIV positive. We have the other one that has HIV for 3 years. We have a third one that does not have HIV, but he is in a relationship with someone who has it. So there's a lot of different questionings throughout the book, and I really wanted to shed a light on this and reinforce that the biggest issue today is the prejudice, because especially in Brazil, in other countries of Latin America, the HIV treatment evolved so much and it's so well covered by the government. And it is something that I get very proud to say that in Brazil we have one of the best treatments for HIV in the world.
Wow.
It's something that really gets me. And every time someone talks about, it's really free, it's really just that easy, and yes, it is just that easy. If you live in a big city like São Paulo, like Rio, the treatment is very easy and it's very affordable because it's free. So, and that gives me very much, I don't know, it's a feeling so good to me, and that's kind of how the story developed itself.
Wow. Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think you're right about this idea of subverting expectations. Like people think, oh, if you're going to write a novel about three young teens who have HIV, like it's going to be a sad story. And it's like, you know what? No, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be that way. And so I just love how your novel pulls the curtain back on a lot of the misconceptions that people have about HIV and AIDS. And it's also a page turner, like I don't know, but maybe it says a lot about me, but I just want to know what happens with like the love interest, like all the relationships. I'm like, oh yeah, let's see what's going to happen. So I think you do such a great job of that, and of smashing that single story that Chimamanda Adichie references in her TED Talk, right? The danger of the single story. Like, there's not just one story about Brazil or about a teen in Brazil or about a teen who's HIV positive in Brazil. I mean, it's really incredible what you've done. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Jenny, oh my God, Jenny, I have your book. I have all of your books, and I like earmarked so many pages here because I read it when it first came out, and I just basically didn't see my family for like that whole like 3 days. I was glued to the story and on the couch, and I'm so eager to hear your story of the story.
Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you all on the panel for getting together and doing this. I'm so honored to be a part of it. So yeah, we are not from here. My experience when I was listening to Liliam is very similar. I was in this place where I was kind of full of rage and hurt about what was happening in my community. And I really needed to say something about it and write a story about it. When we hear about children who are migrants, and we see their stories on television, what I was always struck with was how short and clipped down and chopped up those stories were, and how they just run through our timeline on Twitter, or we hear this 1 minute story on television, or worse, we're just given like a bunch of numbers, that are constantly changing and referring to different things. And there's nothing personal about that, and I wanted this story to become very personal to the reader. It's a story that's very personal to me. My parents are from Central America. My mom's from Guatemala. My dad's from El Salvador. And my husband's from Mexico, so it's kind of like I'm very familiar with all of the communities. I went to Guatemala a lot growing up. In fact, Puerto Barrios, where Pulga's house in the story is, my tia's house. I mean, it's modeled after that. So it's a story that's very personal in that when I was hearing what was happening to children and to families, I saw the faces of my family. You know, I saw my cousins, I saw my tias and my tios, I saw my siblings and myself in those faces. I saw my children, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like far-fetched for me to picture them going through all of this.
Right.
So it was just a story that was born from this place where I wanted to demand more attention to what was really happening, and to really get into, you know, all the grittiness of it, the truth of it, but also doing that, portraying the beauty of our community, you know, because when you hear about Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador or Mexico, you a lot of people just think of like these negative, terrible things, because, you know, that comes from the highest offices in our country, in the United States. That's what people, you know, refer them as. And I wanted to spend time showing the truth of what was happening, and also the beauty of community and of family, and the love, and all of that. So you know, that's where it came from. You take a big issue and you make it very personal.
That's exactly right. And I think you did a gorgeous job. And there are just so many details down to so it's so small, but like the lotion that the mom uses, the Pond's cream. I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, you know, like I can just see it.
Yeah.
And you know, I once heard this great advice about writing stories, like going from big topics to making singular stories. And that is to really focus on going a mile deep and not a mile wide. And like, you know, like when we're faced with the statistics and with the numbers and everything, it's sort of going wide. It's like, these are the numbers. But when you are deep diving into these stories of these three characters, I mean, I felt for them. And you know, if you're looking for just a really gorgeous, dramatic read that is also full of beauty, I mean, this is the book. And both my parents are from Guatemala, so I felt so connected on so many levels. And I wish I'd had this book when I was growing up. You know, I definitely, I'm glad. I'll give it to my sons, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, and then we have Shamile. Oh my goodness! So I have to tell you, I got your book. I got it on Friday. My weekend, I was obsessed. I'm
so glad.
I felt like I entered like a movie, like I was in a movie, like what is happening? And, you know, it's so incredible because I went in thinking like, okay, this is going to be a story mostly about a young girl in Argentina who is, she wants to be a professional futbolista, soccer player, right? And it was about so much more, you know, like it was about that, but it was about so much more. And again, the love relationships, I'm telling you, I was like down to the last page, like, Diego, come on.
Come on, dude, make your move. I love it. So I'm going to bring the conversation full circle, because we're talking about how to bring a huge story or thing and condense it into one character. So with Furia, maybe because I started writing it a long time ago, before I even knew what I was doing, I went kind of the opposite way. Because I always knew that I wanted to write about this character, this girl who had this dream. But then as I kept revising and growing as a person and a woman, and becoming more familiarized with the history of soccer in Latin America, especially, and then the Ni Una Menos movement started in 2015, it kind of like, I realized that the story was way more than just about this character. And that there wouldn't be a Camila, there wouldn't be a Marta today, who is the best soccer player ever, like man or woman, there's no contest. She is the best that has ever played the game. So there wouldn't be a Marta, there wouldn't be a US soccer national team that has won so many World Cups and championships without the work of the feminist movement that started more than 100 years ago. So although soccer is, sometimes people say it's the sport that unifies the whole world, especially during the World Cup,
women have always been not even in the margins. We were not even allowed to be commentators sometimes, or even be fans of the sport. And when in reality, we have been the protagonists since the very beginning. And because sometimes soccer in our community has been equated to masculinity, it was just the perfect vehicle to show this rebellion of this girl and her team and the community of women, and on and on and on until it becomes bigger, when they claim the sport to free themselves from all these bands that society has tied around them. So it was just like, those Russian dolls that you open it, and okay, it was kind of the opposite that I did as I was working with Furia. From my little character, it kept growing and growing and encompassing more things. And that's the beauty of story. Like you said, Jen, we, and everybody else has mentioned, we hear these numbers of the 54,000 people who died during the hurricane, and the millions who have HIV, or the ones that crossed the border unaccompanied. And so they're just numbers. But when we hear their particular story, and that each one of these stories, like this big thread in the net of humanity, that if we break one of them apart, we all come apart.
Yeah.
So, but it's so important to shine a light on each one of these stories, which just show one facet of what it means to be a human being. And this morning when I was getting ready for the festival, and although it's afternoon in most of the places where you are from, I'm in Utah, so we're getting close. It's 11 something here. I did it, but I've been planning for this panel for a long time. But I did not plan on wearing a shirt that would kind of encompass the theme of the panel, hope. Because although we all work with such different topics.
Yeah.
The one thing that I wanted the most was to show the hope that the characters have to have, so that they could survive to tell their stories. And even if the hope manifests in fury and in rage and these other emotions, just because they know there can be a better future or a better reality, and that's what they're striving for.
Right. Oh, it's so beautiful. Really, really well put. It just makes me want to hang out with you all like all day. So next year we'll have to have this panel in person. But how fortunate, right, that we're able to do this work. It's a lot of responsibility, but it's a huge privilege as well. And to be able to kind of, like you said, spin together hope through stories for young people, for all people. It's just incredible. So I have so many questions about craft, and just maybe how you chose the particular structure for your book. I'm curious, for those of you who chose multiple points of view. Lucas and Jenny, you each have 3 points of view. Lilian, you have 2 points of view. So I don't know if you want to speak briefly just on why you thought it was important to have more than one narrator, and then we'll move on. So let's start with Jenny, and then Lucas.
So I wanted to show how we have in my story, we have Pulga and Pequeña, who are both who each they take turns and tell us what they're going through, and how the trip is for them. And what I really hoped would come across is how every migrant's journey is similar, but it's also very different. And we see how these different things, that both Pulga and Pequeña are experiencing affect them in different ways. We also see how they start off at a different point when they leave. Pulga is full of just this feeling that he can conquer and he can do this, even though he's afraid. He truly believes that he's going to be able to make this journey, and he's going to come out of it rather unaffected, I guess, And Pequeña starts off in this place of deep despair and pain. And, she questions whether she can even begin this journey, but she does. And we see how those two, I guess, attitudes and feelings kind of change. You know, we see Pulga kind of go downwards, and the journey really kind of beat him up a bit, and we see Pequeña kind of rising, and coming out of this a little bit, and finally kind of seeing more hope even as the journey progresses and even as it becomes more difficult. So I don't want anybody to think, you know, I'm telling this story about children who are migrating and that they all have the same story. It's all very different. There are different circumstances. There are different things that they bring with them on that journey, right?
Yeah.
And but there's also that similarity.
Right.
There's also that thing that, you know, they are all going through. So really to kind of show the difference, and especially I wanted to make sure I included a male point of view and a female point of view, because I wanted to bring attention to how difficult and how different it is to move through this world as female or female identifying.
Yes.
And I thought that was really important, especially in a story like this. So those were some of the things that, you know, affected my decision and how I told this story.
Right. You're right. The 2 points of view, for me, just they make the book, you know. And I was thinking of 3 because the third character, oh my God. And I won't tell anybody what happens, but I was crying. I really was. And you're right. You know, at one point, I think, again, she disguises herself as a boy, right? And she has her hair pulled back and the hat, and for purposes of safety. And it's just like one of many examples of how different her journey was. So thank you so much. So Lucas, why did you choose multiple points of view?
To me, actually, it came very naturally, because when I start outlining the book, the first scene on my mind was that of the opening chapter, that I knew that I want that main character have their HIV positive diagnosis. So while I'm writing this scene, I describe a guy sitting next to him, messing with his phone. And then I thought, well, who is this second guy who's there? Why he's there? Why is he there? So I outlined the second character, and then I gave him a love interest. And then I found out, well, who is this love interest? And then I came with the third character. But I think as I was writing the book, the main thing that I wanted to pay attention was community. I wanted to talk a lot about friendship and a lot of how one people can help each other during the journey of our lives, and in particular the journey with HIV. How one character that have more experience can, I don't know, bring someone calm down a little bit, because it's not at the end of the world. And I really wanted to talk about different things that I wouldn't be able to talk about with just one character. I want to talk about the loneliness of an HIV positive person that a person that is recently diagnosed doesn't deal with immediately. I wanted to talk about the prejudice of someone who is HIV negative but doesn't know what that means when he starts a relationship with someone who is HIV positive. And I wanted to talk about those different families that they have, these different relations to the world that they have, because at the same time that Victor, for example, who is the youngest of the 3, he has the most comprehensive family, he has the cool parents, and he is still the most prejudiced kid of the book. So he has a lot to learn, because he has to understand where those prejudices can come from, because it's not from his family, because his family is super open. It's about, I don't know, the world and how the world portrays HIV and HIV positive people. So I really wanted to tackle on these different subjects. And I guess with just one character, I wouldn't be able. And with 3, I guess I was able to put, I don't know, the most of the things that I wanted. I guess it went well at the end.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I'm so glad that you did choose the 3 points of view, because it does, like you said, it's kind of like getting different slices of the same pie, you know, like you're able to really experience it fully in that way. And Liliam, I feel like I know why you chose 2 points of view, because of the structure. I mean, the the story, and you follow that same kind of retelling.
Yeah, I mean, if you read the various versions of the Orpheus and Eurydice, it focuses mostly on on Orpheus's story, and I just I'm interested in that story, but not as much. Like, I really wanted to understand Eurydice's story. So my novel, for the most part, is told in alternating points of view, but it's really focusing on Eurydice's side, Eurydice's Yuri's story. And we really kind of dig into the fact that she's, suffering from PTSD from the Hurricane Maria, from surviving Hurricane Maria, but she's also suffering or trying to overcome or just battling this kind of really abusive, stalkering, angry spirit that has been hounding her since she was a little kid. And this idea of what, very abusive relationships, and how that manifests in our lives, in young women's lives, right? And what we do to like hide those, those stories, those real truths, right? So I really wanted to make sure I got both of them. So yeah, it was really fun for me to do that. No. Not fun. It was hard, but it was good for me.
It wasn't fun. Big time. And that's something I want to talk about as well. But it's just so great that in your retelling, you can do whatever you want. I think sometimes other writers don't realize that, or aspiring writers are thinking like, oh, I have to do it this way, that way. It's like, no, you're the author. You have authority. That's the word author is an authority, and you have that. And you can, there can be a dozen retellings more. So that's, I think, inspiring. And what I especially took away from your book, so many amazing things, but one thing is that Yuri didn't, in the end, need to be quote unquote saved, in the sense that she was waiting for this boy to save her, like she ended up saving her, spoiler alert, saving herself, right? But in the same way, Shamila, like in your book, I so appreciated that as well, because it's kind of like all arrows were pointing towards one direction, where you're kind of like, oh, Diego's going to fly in from Italy and save the day and sweep her away, and she's never going to have to want for anything the rest of her life. And that moment where she decides to really take her story and her future into her own hands, I just was like, clapping, like you could hear me all the way in Utah, but I was like, this is just phenomenal, because it's another example that you can show young readers. And I didn't know if you wanted to share a little bit about whether that was always the case in your drafts, or if you found that to be something that you wanted to create later in revisions, like how that story arc came to be.
No, Camila was always going to save herself in one way or another. And the ways in which she did it changed throughout revisions, but I always knew that it wasn't going to be Diego. And the thing that I wanted to showcase the most in their love story is that their love story is not a toxic love. He is a good person. He really does love her, and she loves him too. But sometimes things happen at the wrong time. And sometimes a good opportunity or a good relationship can be the worst obstacle that can present in your way. And that's what happens to Camila. And she struggles because she wants to have it all. The women in her family always had to choose either love or their dreams. They always thought that they were choosing love, but then they didn't find that at the end. And now Camila is presented with both. And so that is her hardest trial. How to work it out, how to be true to the two things that she had strived for the most throughout her life. And the other thing is how she is not saved by the boy, but she couldn't have been saved herself without the help of her team and the other women in her life. Even her mother, although she had such a difficult relationship with her mom, she was so judgmental and critical of her mother's choices. In the end, it was a beautiful journey for me to discover that the only way that Camila could free herself from this cycle of toxic love that the women in her family had experienced was to help save her mom, because they couldn't do it one without the other. And sometimes I read a lot in stories when, because of the character of the group, the age group that we write for, like the young adults have to, be alone in the world. That can happen, but also they still need to be part of their community or their family. That's so important for Camila, to still have these bonds to her ancestresses and her mom. And so being free didn't mean to cut these people away from her life.
Yeah.
It meant to help them free themselves too. And so it was just a way to show how we're all really interconnected, and that in the end, and again, spoiler alert, Diego does come back into her life in a different way. Yeah. How, like if it's meant to be, it's gonna come back to you.
That's right. That's right. Oh, it's such a powerful message. And it's very true that we exist within our communities, within the web of various communities. So I've always thought that, when I've been given advice, like, just do this, just do that. It's like, well, what about my mom or my sisters? It's like you do exist in a family, in a community, in a culture. And that kind of connects to my final question. And this is the inaugural Latinx Kidlit Book Festival. And I feel like it would be a missed opportunity if I didn't ask you all to, in a lightning round, just kind of, share your experience as a Latinx author in the business. I know that's a broad question. In 30 seconds or less. It's a huge topic, right? And we could have a whole panel just on that. But I thought maybe I could frame it this way. If you could each go around and just give some advice to specifically to aspiring Latinx writers, because these panels didn't exist when we were kind of coming up, and we're still, of course, growing and learning. But it would be great to hear from each of you very briefly, just some advice you have for Latinx aspiring authors. All right, we'll start with Shamile first, and then go up to Jenny, Lucas, and William.
There you go. Well, thank you, Jen. And my piece of advice is something that I tell myself all the time, which is a phrase that has followed me or haunted me since I was a very young teen. And it's a phrase from Shakespeare, which says, above all else, be true to yourself. Mm-hmm. And throughout my career, when nobody wanted a story set in Argentina told about a girl, or from the point of view of a girl who wants to play soccer, I kept thinking, maybe I should write about something else. Maybe I should not make my characters Latinas anymore. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine reminded me of that phrase, and that's when I had my big break and my first offer for a book that was not Furia, but I kept going at it. And now to know that she had such a great impact with a super wide audience, not only in the US, but with all the Argentines scattered all over the world, or people for whom soccer means so much, or people who don't really even like soccer at all, but they found something in Camila's story that resonated with them. That is the fuel that keeps me going to be true to myself and tell the stories that I want to tell.
I love that. I'm writing that down. Thank you. Okay, Jenny.
Our stories are valid. Our stories are worthy. We may not see that always reflected in the industry or in the classroom, but even more reason why we need to keep telling them. So my advice is for, young writers to tell the stories of our community and to tell our truths.
Yes.
And to just keep at it.
Thank you. Lucas.
Yeah.
All of the above, and don't disbelieve yourselves. Keep believing in yourself, because we will hear some harsh things, some things that people outside of our community maybe doesn't listen to. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you just trust yourself and trust that you are making a good work, and be able to make mistakes and to hear the people that are publishing right now, watch all those panels, and keep writing.
Wonderful, great advice. Thank you. And Lilian.
This is quick. This is you have your art and you have business, and make sure you have time for your art, but make sure that you're always
All
getting
right.
paid.
There you go. You heard it here. All right, we're going to take some questions from some audience members at this point. First one is from Lyra O in 6th grade in Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Lyra, and my question is, how do you take a bunch of ideas and put them in one story?
Wow. Okay. Maybe just a couple of you can answer here. Go for it. Just jump in.
Okay, I'll go first. A lot of coffee, organizing your ideas. And I don't know, you stick yourself to the idea that you like the most and work on that. And I don't know if you have any other idea in the middle of the way, write it down, but leave it for later. And write about something that you are in love with, because you are writing for a very long time. And so to me, that's it.
Wonderful. Great. Someone else. That's great.
I think if you have a lot of ideas that are coming to you for one story, find if it, first of all, think a lot, because writing is a lot of not just sitting and actually typing, but, just a lot of thinking. Think if these stories go together, if they fit together, and then find that common thing that connects them together.
Yeah, I love that, because you're right. Sometimes staring out the window is writing, which again is another myth. I always thought, like you said, writing was like, I got to work harder, and it's like, no, it's not always that. Great. Okay, let's take another question from the audience. Okay, when did you know you wanted to be a writer?
Hi, my name is Lyra, and my question is,
All right, so let's have maybe a couple of you take this one. When did you know you wanted to be a writer?
Okay, I'll go. I'll dive in. I have always told myself stories. Ever since I was a little girl, I learned how to speak when I was very, very young. And my mom would always say that I would always even talk in my sleep. And so when nobody wanted to listen to me anymore, I just started writing. And that's the way in which I have always processed life and what life means and the big things that happen, and like having a new sibling or saying goodbye to a loved one or moving to a different place. So ever since I was very young, but I didn't know that I could be a writer until I was already an adult and a mom. And I wish I had met an author who looked like me and who wrote in Spanglish like I do. And so I hope that the audience watching this, the children especially, can be inspired to start putting their stories down sooner than I did.
Thank you.
I'll just do quickly. I had the same thing, is that to me, writing is my way of coping. It's my way of trying to handle whatever happens, trauma and beauty and joy, all those things. So for me, writing was my tool of survival. And so although it took me a long time to be an author, I still use that. I like to write it down. I like to walk around with my notes. So, you don't have to wait to be published. You could write your caption, on Instagram. You could be a poet. You don't have to wait to be blessed. You are a writer when you say you are a writer. So.
Yeah. Yes. Yay. I love that. Okay, we have one more. No video with this one, so I'll read it out loud. Do you have a favorite character that you've written? If so, who? And what makes them so special? This is from Julia C. in 5th grade in Connecticut. Ooh, all right. Let's have a couple of you take this one.
I'll start and I'll go quickly because I know we're running out of time. Every character is always my favorite as I'm writing them. And I guess that's why right now with We Are Not From Here, I really loved writing Pequeña. She's very magical. She lets herself fall into her magical world. But she's also very much anchored in reality and facing reality. And I really loved writing a character that, was kind of like balancing those two things.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
To me, even when I hate the character or the scene of that character in that particular time, I love to write about it. But I do love to write about their best friends, who isn't the main characters, because friendship is a theme that is so, I don't know, I love so much to talk about friendship, and I love my friends, and I can put a little bit of my friends in my friends' characters. So overall, all of the best friends characters to me is my favorite parts of this book.
Yeah.
Okay, for me, my favorite character, one of my favorite characters is Karen, which is one of the little girls that Camila tutors in English at a home for orphan children and also for neglected children. And I love writing about her because she's so spunky, and she is what Camila could have been if she wasn't so afraid of speaking her mind when she was younger. And so it was a great way to explore a different side of my character. And that's why they connect immediately. It's because they see in each other a reflection. And so, and also, again, that hope that Karen has for the future, and knowing, and just that arrogance in thinking that she can do better than everybody else. I just love her for it.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Liliam, do you have a
Hi. Yeah, just quickly. I've already said it. I love Beauty. I love my girl because she's the one who suffers the most, and she's the one who survives. She overcomes. We talked about who saves each other. They save each other. Themselves. Like they realize that they need to overcome this death, and shed something that's weighing them down. So both of them do. But I love Beauty the most.
No, I know. It's like I really cared about her, and I wanted her so badly to be okay,
Yeah.
And I guess it's a reflection of all of us. We want us all to be okay, I mean, we see ourselves in characters, and you really all created such rich, drawn out, whole, round characters that I'll remember for years to come. So. Thank you so much. This has been so inspiring, and it flew by. And I have to tell everybody to just go buy all these books. And just to summarize, here's the advice that you all gave, right? To thy own self be true. Your stories are valid and they are worthy. Believe in yourself. You have space for your art and for your business, and get paid. And finally, drink lots of coffee. So thank you so much for your stories and your storytelling, and I personally can't wait for what you come up with next. So everybody stay in touch, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.
Hold up your books.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much for moderating. You're the best.
Yes, this was fantastic.
And this is like a treat. I'm like, so here we go. Woo!